Ideas for the present, dreams for the future. Your imagination holds the key. Walt Disney once said the era we live in is a dream come true. But there are still plenty of avenues to explore. The Disney Channel invites you to join us now and imagine.
Like the rings on a tree, our fingerprints stamp us as one of a kind. In these cabinets are over 1 million fingerprints, and no two of them are the same. To find out more about them, we're with Richard Gruno, a fingerprint expert with the San Jose Police. What are fingerprints?
Well, you'll notice, if you've ever looked at your hands before, that on your fingers and on the palms, and then also on the surface of the feet, you have these tiny raised portions of skin. And these raised portions of skin we call friction ridges. Now, you'll notice that on these friction ridges there are very tiny pores, and these pores exude a perspiration which coats the friction ridge, so that when an object is touched, a duplication of these friction ridges is left on that object.
Are all fingerprints totally different?
Well, two fingerprints are different if they're made by either different fingers or if they're made by different people.
To see for myself, I ink the tips of my fingers and let Richard apply my prints to the identification card.
Well, what we want to do is actually coat these.
Making your fingerprints is really quite simple. All you need is an ink pad and a white sheet of paper. You roll your fingertip over the ink and then roll it again over the paper. Every single one of our fingerprints is a bit different. No two are the same, even those of identical twins. Here, my prints are coming out almost letter perfect, but that's not always the case.
And you have to remember that these prints are taken under academic conditions here, which means that I am taking them for the purpose of identification. And the latent prints left at the crime scene are chance impressions. In other words, they were left there not for the purpose of identification, but for the purpose of moving an object or transporting it.
At the fingerprint computer, a scanner enlarges the prints from the identification card and displays them on the screen. What kind of fingerprints do I have?
Well, there's basically 3 types of patterns, and we can remember them by the word law, L-A-W. There are loops, arches, and whorls. Now, each of these categories are broken down into subdivisions, but we won't need those subdivisions to talk about your prints. What you have on your right index, number 2 finger, is a whorl. Now, we can tell it's a whorl because the ridges form a complete circuit. On your next finger, which is the right middle finger, what you have is a loop. Now, a loop is that type of pattern in which the ridges enter on one side and then recurve and pass out on the same side in which they entered. Now, the next pattern type we can talk about is an arch. But since you don't have any arches, I have one right here. Now, an arch is that type of pattern in which the ridges enter on one side, make a rise or a curve, and then pass out on the opposite side from which they entered. Very distinctive from the other 2 types of patterns, the whorl and the loop.
Can you tell anything about a person by their fingerprints?
Well, there have been some studies done based on certain types of criminals or certain types of persons have certain types of loops, arches, or whorls. However, there is no scientific significance given to these arguments.
At a crime scene, fingerprints are one of the first things the investigators look for. Prints can be found on practically any object. In some cases, even persons wearing gloves leave traces of their prints as the print ridges push through the material. Fingerprint experts find prints by dusting a suspected object with black powder, then lifting the prints off with an adhesive tape. In some instances, an expert can identify someone by finding as little as 1/4 of a square inch of their print. By checking the prints found at a crime scene against those on file, the police are often able to make a match. Physically looking for prints is often a lengthy and time-consuming process. It can sometimes take more than a week to search through the files and find a suspect from a given fingerprint. Today, science and technology does in minutes what an entire police fingerprint department used to do in a month. Fingerprint computers dramatically increase the speed at which a latent print can be identified against those held on file. The computer breaks the print down into separate details and translates this data into a mathematical equation similar to geometry. The numerical value of these reference points is stored and can be recalled at any time. These patterns characterize all of our individual fingerprints and are called minutiae.
Now, a minutia point is an ending ridge such as this one. We can tell that the ridges on either side flow, but this one ends. We also notice the same thing happens in this area, another ending ridge. We notice here are two opposing ending ridges, one that ends here and one that ends on the top. We can tell here that we have a short ending ridge ending on either end. Now, these are the points which I actually encode for the computer. I do this by placing the cursor over the top of the point and running the tail the way that the point flows. I hit the enter button and the computer extracts numbers down here on the lower left-hand corner. Now, the computer won't actually remember the finger that I am inputting. What the computer actually remembers are these numbers in the lower right-hand corner. Now, these numbers are taken into the computer, an algorithm or a matching algorithm is performed on these, and a list of prospective people comes out on the printer to my right. Now, this list is ranked by score. In other words, the best fit of these minutiae to the minutiae that we have on the file is ranked according to the score, the statistical score that comes out.
When we think of the millions and millions of fingerprints stored somewhere on file and realize that each and every one is a little bit different, we suddenly understand how many unique individuals there are in this world.